talent too. We had top 10 talent, clearly.
Guys, you know what I saw last weekend? I watched almost every big game, parts of it, some of it, clips. I thought Miami was the best team I saw all Thanksgiving weekend. It's the God's honest truth. Especially starting from Friday, really, all the way till Saturday night. I'm watching these games, and I just said to myself, "What a shame that the malaise happened in the middle of the year." I thought Miami against Pitt. I'm just watching this game top to bottom, and I just said to myself, and I know I'm a little bit biased, but I try to be as fair as possible on both sides of the ball and special teams, in the ability to throw the ball and to run the ball when you need to, and to put pressure on the quarterback and to stop the run and to be physical and be fast. I thought Miami was the best team I saw all weekend.
Yeah, let's talk about that Pitt game, Steve, because we haven't talked since then. Obviously, that was a situation where a lot of us with PTSD were saying, cold game. Pitt's got a good quarterback, tricky offense. Their defense is built to stop the run and force us to pass, which is kind of playing into, some of our issues in the past. They'd get a lot of turnovers. It just seemed like everything was set up for Pitt to beat us based on historical kind of trends. Miami goes and not just wins, but dominates from start to finish. Looks, like you said, is like one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country that weekend. What did you see from the Pitt game, and what did that tell you about the trajectory of this program?
Well, let me go back to the book of Michael Irvin. I'll say it again. Hope dictates effort, and we still had hope. So I wasn't worried about that. And when I woke up that morning, I saw on Twitter that the weather's going to be 34, and people are acting like it's the Arctic freeze. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. We spoke last week about a game where I was at in 2003, our final Big East contest. It was literally 12 degrees the whole weekend on average. If you talk to anyone that's actually played football, when you still have something to play for and you're not just packing it in, it's after the first couple of plays, 34 degrees does not seem that cold. Now, if you're playing in the ice bowl, yeah, it's cold regardless. But I thought after the first drive or two, our players were out there and they could have played all day. And I really like the intensity, the focus. This will be a recurring theme. I still wish we played a faster pace. That'll always be something that Mario Cristobal will frustrate me with, because here's what I noticed about a lot of our games. We dominate the first quarter, and going into the second quarter, game's going on, and I'm thinking, man, we're really controlling things. I look in the score 7-3 or 7-0, and I'm thinking, why are we not up 17-0 here? And what I loved about it is that the way you capitalize on a feeding frenzy is you build upon it. You build upon it. And as soon as it got to 17-7, it felt like the game was over. And just the continued creativity of Shannon Dawson, specifically around the usage and the utilization of Malachi Toney, I think it's one of the big stories of the year. I was talking to a booster that we all know, his name will be protected. I asked him, is Miami a lot like LA in a sense that if you're the USC Trojans, you cannot just win. You're in LA. This has to be entertaining and fun. You want to be the Iowa Hawkeyes, go ahead. You better be in Iowa City. You cannot just try to win games 24-21 and say we had 40 minutes of time of possession. No, this is the entertainment business. The bottom line is still winning, but the biggest frustration that I had over the middle of the year is we did not play in a way that would attract top 100 recruits. I'll be honest with you guys. After that SMU game, I said to myself, I can see why Jeremiah Smith is at Columbus and not Miami. There is no blue chip receiver or an electrifying offensive player that want to play in that offense. The last month, that is an offense that I would consider.
Yeah, the pace is interesting to me because, it's a balance. And like, there's so many layers to it. People say, oh, we need to pick up the pace. And I agree with it to an extent, but it's like, how so? I heard a discussion yesterday with some NFL people talking about the pace that's really important is from huddle to snap, because you can get the play off quick before they change, which is different than, running a lot of plays. You look at, I pulled up time of possession. You're going to love the teams in the top four, Steve. Time of possession, top four. Army number 1, James Madison number 2, Miami number 3, Air Force number 4. So, but
We're a
But
service academy.
but
Miami Marines.
But 5 is Ohio State, 6 is Georgia, 7 is Indiana. So, and then there's some other top teams sprinkled there. I think generally the better teams are higher in time of possession than the teams at the bottom. The teams at the bottom are usually the worst teams because they go 3 and out a lot. So there's like there's no one stat that kind of says how we need to play, but
Danny,
it's just not fun. Or it's a lot funner now than it was before, I should say.
Danny, there's 2 ways to look at this. No, I don't want to go full-blown Art Briles for 60 minutes a game. I think people have to keep that in mind. There is a context to this. And look, there's the old argument that, well, we don't hit explosive plays. Right. My view is if you don't hit explosive plays, let's go death by 1,000 cuts and add plays. We're the better, deeper, stronger team. You want more plays. You want to shorten the game. You do not want to lengthen them. And people could say what they want. If you think having the ball for 40 minutes and scoring only 20 points in Dallas is acceptable under any circumstance, guys, it's not. The other thing is, yes, if you hit more 80-yard home runs, that'll skew a lot of things. Guess what? We don't do that right now. So I would say, why not add more body punches throughout the fight? The other thing was, if I'm not mistaken, you could put in rules. No one says that you have to start a drive with no huddle, quick tempo, and just stay there. If you are worried about too many 3 and outs, wearing out the defense, that is a valid concern. I would just have one rule. I would say, okay, let's start off with regular traditional tempo and huddle up. And after the first down, or let's say the 3rd play of every drive, you have the option as you start to move the chains and you start to flip the field. Why not go with a little more quick tempo?
This is so it's such an interesting question. I really don't know the answer, and I love talking about it. Bagging Up says, which we love going back and forth with my guy Bagging Up. He says the best team wants more plays. Fact.
Yes.
Ohio State's the best team in the country. Plays per game, 115th, below Miami. So, I think part of what I'm trying to figure out is it about the league? And what I mean by that is, you look at SMU. SMU has been great in the ACC, like dominant in the ACC, not great outside the ACC. The Miami Hurricanes have been amazing outside of the ACC. Within the ACC, that's where we've had our problems. Close games, we let these teams hang around and they beat us. So I wonder, is it not so much about more plays, less plays? How do we play league games? And is it maybe different than how you play some of the other games? Like, do we need to have a certain approach to the ACC? We're not going to be a totally different offense in the ACC, but like, is it different in this conference and the way teams are set up than other games? I don't know the answer. I'm throwing that at you because it seems like some teams are better in the ACC than us.
Danny, going to Ohio State, I'm with you. The numbers are the numbers, but as the year has gone on, Julian, you know what I'm saying? He has hit deep shots and hit home runs to a couple of guys that we're very familiar with. One of them is Jeremiah Smith and then Julian Saint. I mean, I watched a lot of that Michigan-Ohio State game. That was on the other big screen at Coach JB's. The one thing that I noticed was even when Michigan was chipping their way down the field, as soon as they settled for field goals, I said, oh, it's over. It's over. You got to get home here. You got to get across the goal line because field goals are going to get you beat. And eventually, late in that game, here's the difference. Ohio State was gashing with big plays over the top, or Bo Jackson was hitting explosives. When you hit explosives, I agree. You don't need as much tempo because you're chewing up 50 to 80 yards in one chunk. But a lot of your great offenses that utilize tempo properly and were good at it, it was like a piranha. They took small bites, but they did it often, and they did it quickly. That's all I'm saying. We don't need to be Art Briles in 2014 here.
Well, look, I mean, you were calling for a lot of this stuff mid-season, and there was clearly a shift after the SMU game, right? We can't sit here and say that what we finished with on offense was what we finished with or we started with,
right?
And the results followed, right? It's just a much more fun team to watch. The team is having more fun. You've been saying it the whole time that, this is Miami. The team needs to have fun. Pete, in terms of like, we're talking about talent and all this stuff. I wonder, like, when I look at the Ohio States of the world, LSU's, Alabama's, just thinking of teams that have been great teams, even Georgia. If you look at those teams, I'm talking from 2019 on, let's say, Michigan being kind of an exception, but they all had 2 dominant pass catchers, at least, meaning like legit first round stars. And even Michigan had a first round tight end and a second round receiver. But like Georgia had Browers and McConkey. LSU, we know who they had with Chase and Jefferson. Alabama had a bunch of guys.
A fleet.
Yeah. And then Ohio State, obviously, they always had two guys. So I'm wondering if maybe some of it is with this offense, especially now with Malachi Toney doing what he does. And Pete, I want to get your thoughts on this is, because it goes to talent evaluation and talent acquisition, like getting another guy or finding another guy amongst Moore and Upshaw, whoever, that is like on the level of a Malachi Toney. Because we got one, but we don't have two.
Yeah, just in the bigger scheme of things here, I think we have to realize that the talent evaluation staff, Mario, the people who make these decisions, it's not just about, in today's era, how much money you have to spend and how you are recruiting in terms of bringing guys to your program, but are you spending the money in the right spots? It's the NFL. It's the NFL. If you spend the money in the wrong place, so you know what?
Yeah.
In my opinion, you need a defensive end to replace the production that you're getting in a Ruben Bain and an Akeem Mesidor. I don't think they're going to go for two. I think they really like what they have. Their young talent, Hayden Lowe will be coming back, who it was a big investment last offseason. And you have a nice class coming in here, but you have to sometimes make a decision. You're like, all right, we do need a defensive end, but if we can go get a Cam Coleman, right, that we're going to have to go break the bank on, and then we may not be able to go get the same caliber of defensive end that we needed, but do we trust what we have here right now? Let's go get a guy who's been productive somewhere. It can be a nice veteran piece that we know what he's going to give us, right? I'm not talking about like a Tyler Barron was a guy that you took a chance on because of his talent, right? I'm talking about a guy who's been a 2 to 3 year starter. I don't know what the NFL outlook's going to look like, but guess what? We know what he's going to bring you each week on Saturdays, right? So those are the decisions that I'm very interested to see how, because when we talk about taking the next step, some of these guys in this recruiting class will help next year, but taking the next step is going to be a lot of the guys on the roster already and the pieces that you supplement here in the portal. So those decisions, they got money to spend. They've got decisions to make here in terms of where they want to spend it, because you can't spend it everywhere. Quarterback's going to cost you a lot, but that's going to be if you lose a Markel Bell, all right, you're going to need to spend probably big on a left tackle or another premier offensive lineman. So those are the decisions that will be very interesting. And as much as I'm talking about the recruiting class, and obviously, as you guys see, I think it needs. We were told it would be top 5 here at Miami, and I know the landscape's changing, but that's I gotta hold the staff to that. Then, as much as I'm talking about that, the portal hits is what's going to take this program to the next level from where you are right now as a 10-win team.
The one recruit we did not talk about from this incoming class that signed yesterday, that is a wild card, is a guy like Vance Spafford. I still believe that there needs to be an injection of a little bit more speed offensively. We need guys that can take the top off the defense or can shake and wiggle and get free in the run game. That's why Pringle, I thought, was so key. His vision and his ability to hit longer plays changed the complexion of the whole offense. And Samarian Wingo, is he that number one? See, the problem with a guy like Cam Coleman, who was the number 2 receiver behind Jeremiah Smith in that year that he came out of high school, is that he's going to want to know who's my quarterback. He's sick of bad quarterback play. He's had that for 2 years. He's like, you know what? I actually need to go to a spot where I know who my quarterback is. If he made a commitment right now to Miami, he wouldn't know. That's the reality. And Petey, to your point about allocation of money, if you're, say, Steve, you're in charge, you have this much money to get either a top 5 wide receiver like a Cam Coleman or a flat-out premier All-American edge guy. You know what? I think edge guys are actually more difficult to find than productive receivers in today's football.
Bagging Up's asking, when's the last time you saw an elite wide receiver nationally on the outside? I don't know the last time I've seen a white wide receiver in high school running 4.35 that's actually productive and not just a track guy. So he's a unique kind of dude. I want to get into this recruiting class and everybody's favorite players in it, or some guys we want to watch. First, I want to talk about one of our favorite places, whether that's Steve, Pete, or myself. You catch all three of us at Duffy's Tavern right there on the edge of Coral Gables, the home of the Hurricanes. Look at the new snazzy website there, Steve.
Wow.
Yeah, I hope you're back here for a playoff game or
me too.
Championship game on the 19th so we can hang out. But next time we'll definitely get together again at Duffy's. There's, you see the classics, Death Dog. I was eating this since I was like 6 years old. I remember watching West Virginia and Miami back in the Big East, eating a Death Dog in one of those road games. But this place has been around for 60 plus years, now taking credit cards, the home of the Hurricanes, the cheers of Miami, Duffy's Tavern. And one more guy got a shout out. You saw him on the show yesterday. Our boy, the Orchid Man, ORCHID Man, Florida. They are the landscape artisans of South Florida, from Palm Beach all the way down to the Florida Keys, 786-271-0332. They will run your whole operation, 10% off your first service for a limited time only. There will be a quarterback of your landscaping, residential or commercial, all the stuff that you don't want to think about, maintenance, irrigation, tree stump grinding, all that kind of stuff, hurricane prep. They will take care of that for you. They'll run the whole operation. That is OrchidMan Florida, ORCHID Man Florida.com. All right, so I want to get into just some specifics on this class. And Pete or Steve, you opened the door talking about Vance Spafford, who he kind of reminds me of like a Philip Dorsett.
Yeah,
because he's not someone who runs after the catch so much like others, and he's a good route runner and he's super fast. He's kind of like, to me, that mold of player. Who are some of your favorites? And you can start with Vance Spafford, who is in your neck of the woods there in Southern California. But who are some of your favorite players in this class? Guys you're excited to see on Green Tree and beyond.
Here's what makes me curious. I was listening to Mario's press conference yesterday, and he said something that was very, very eye-opening. He said, and this is not just based on Cantwell, this is the best offensive line class I have ever signed. I was like, wow, really? So Mirabel's going to have a lot to work with. And I expect at least one, if not two, to be a part of that rotation, just given the attrition that'll be taking place very soon. That is the identity. That is the DNA of Mario as a coach. When he says it, that says a lot. Also, here's where I'm curious. Corey Heatherman, I believe, should be up for the Broyles Award. He's done a fantastic job. Just a thumbs up to him. He's been an absolute godsend on that side of the ball. Linebacker recruiting has not been great for a very long time. And Danny, I know you talk about it a lot. The last good class we had was Shaq Quarterman, Michael Pinckney, and Zach McLeod, I believe. That was back
10 years ago.
10 years ago. Wow, the time flies. This class has guys, I don't think any of them are like highly recruited or highly rated to the degree of, let's say, a top 10. But I've heard a lot of good things about these guys' athletic profile. We got the young man from Louisville to flip late. And these are Heatherman evaluations. He has a certain type that he likes athletically in terms of stature. So I'm very curious to see how that room develops. And then also last year with Kellen Wiley, do we have a few building blocks moving forward?
Yeah, I love those linebackers. I think Jordan Campbell's a guy we haven't talked about a lot from Northwestern. Is he going to be a linebacker or a defensive end? That's something people got to sort out. He played defensive end last year, kind of played all over the place earlier in his high school career, even defensive backfield. So he's one of these guys that's played a lot of different positions. Can he be a full-time linebacker? But then you have guys like J.J. Edwards, long, runs a 4.5, played linebacker in high school, which now these guys don't do. And then Carson Bushy land yesterday, multi-sport, triple jump, long jump qualifier, 6'3", 220, plays both ways in high school. I mean, kind of fits a lot of the things that you want at the linebacker position. Pete, we were on for all day yesterday, but I never asked you this question. Is who are some guys that you particularly like that are kind of, they don't have to be the number one player, they could be, but just someone that you're like, man, this is one of the guys in this class, or a couple of guys that I just like.
I like the pair of pass rushers, Ashari Charles and DeAnthony Lafayette, man. I think those guys are dynamic. Ashari Charles a little bit bigger, a little bit more stout right now at this point than DeAnthony Lafayette. But Lafayette, we saw some of his stuff at running back as well, D, but his his athleticism, his twitch as a pass rusher. I mean, he explodes off the snap. He's dynamic, man. And I think he just, because he was a late flip and 3-star recruit, like maybe a 4-star on some sites, falling under the radar, but I really like that one. See, guys, I don't care just about the rankings. This is not what this is about. I like guys who aren't 5 stars too. And Ashari Charles as well. I think both of them, man, absolutely just favorites of Jason Taylor. And I think that they're gonna be studs down the line.
Hey guys, just an opinion, yay or nay on Calvin Russell. Do you want him in the class?
I want him. I certainly want him. Yeah,
really?
I certainly want him. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase, right? Everybody's got a price. It goes both ways. What price are we going to go to for a Calvin Russell? I think that's the bigger question for me, because if I'm saying, look, Calvin Russell, do I think he's a net positive? He's in your class for sure. Because I've heard he's a great worker and there's no character stuff. I've not heard any character stuff. I know the process is turning people off, but nobody that I've talked to has said this guy's got bad character or we don't like the kid. I've not heard that from anybody. I really haven't, whether it's because people know him from the high school side or people on the UM side. So, I think he's good in that way. It's just, how much you pay for a guy that needs to gain weight. You don't know if he's going to play basketball. You already have some really good receivers in this class. You already have 3 freshman receivers last year that you like. So to me, it's more about the money part of it than the player, as I lay it out. What do you think? I see you shaking your head, so I want to hear what you got to say.
Look, you guys are much closer to the situation than I am. And look, anyone that knows my posting history on CanesInSight, the greatest message board in the history of Miami football, K9 Kane, by the way. You are a fan of guys who play multiple sports. So am I. All the way to the point they get to college. Then you got to focus on one thing. But I am still a believer that you got to have players that actually want to be Miami Hurricanes or wherever they're going. I want them to be committed to there. It just can't be about the money, because there's a fine line between being a soldier and a mercenary. Mercenaries fight battles, but you win wars with soldiers. I want guys that are all in. And again, the allocation of money, going back to what Pete says, you're right. He's going to get a lot of money from somewhere, but he may not actually be a real part of this wide receiver rotation next season. That is a reality to this whole thing. Because I look at the Upshaws of the world. I think Josh Moore's going to have a really good year next year. He flashed a lot. Okay, I'm still a little bit mystified why in the beginning or the middle part of the year, he seemed to fly into the Bermuda Triangle and he disappeared. And we all know Malachi Tony is just a superstar. So I don't know. Look, I would ask Calvin Russell, are you going to wherever place, whether it's Miami, Syracuse, LSU, are you going there because you really want to be, or is it just about the money? Because if it's the latter, I don't know. I'm the type of guy that say, you know what, good luck wherever you're going.
I like my guy Night King here. He says, what's wrong with bag chasing? Are we all bag chasing in our lives?
There's nothing wrong with it. We're all capitalists. But if your focus, look, in general, when you talk to a lot of people involved, if you're going to somewhere just for the money, I think that could lead to some issues. There's a reality. Everyone's out for the money. We're all out for the money. I don't do anything for free. But at the same time, the jobs that I take, I generally actually want to do in the first place. But yes, with payment, with remuneration, as they say.
I hear you. I just think when you're spending a lot of money on a high school player, I want it to be a Jackson Cantwell. I want it to be a Jeremiah Smith. I want it to be somebody that I can see physically, mentally, skill-wise tomorrow starting. In terms of when you get to the high dollar amounts, right? It's hard for me to justify spending a lot of money on someone that needs a lot of development, even if the payoff could be really good. That's kind of where I'm at, especially when you have good players already. But there's some guys that I like. I want to get your thoughts on these two. But I become, Steven, you remember Butch Davis, obviously that era. One thing I can tell you about the Butch Davis era being on Green Tree, I was a kid at that time, but I stayed on Green Tree so I can kind of compare apples to apples. Even the defensive linemen that weren't the first round picks looked the part. The Cornelius Greens, the Alton Wright kind of guy.
Green, Andrew Williams. Yeah.
they all looked good. Like the linebacker, Rodney Dangerfield. Remember him? Or not Rodney Dangerfield.
Kenny
Kenny
Dangerfield
Dangerfield.
from
Yeah, Rodney wouldn't
Louisiana.
do too good.
He wore number 47, and he actually started at one game throughout his career and was an outstanding special teams guy. And he could have probably started at about 100 other schools. We had another linebacker that actually made his living for a while in the National Football League, only started 1 year, Daryl McClover, who was an unbelievable athlete. But back then, there was no portal. I don't know if guys of that nature even stick around 3 years at a program, much less 4 or 5.
Definitely not. But what I'm getting at is that all the Butch Davis guys looked the part. And even if they didn't make it, because you look at those Butch classes, they did not all become the first rounders. A lot of them didn't do anything. Some of them were role players like the guys we just talked about, but they all looked the part. So he was saying, listen, I might hit on some of these guys. I might miss on some of these guys, but I want guys that look the part getting off the bus. And
we're all airport. We are all airport. Josh Pate said it. And Josh is a guy that I like. I communicate with him once in a while. And he'll tell you, being on sidelines of various games, he says the Miami team looks different.
The more I'm around this and the closer I get to it and the more I see things work and not work, I've become very much like, man, look, you need the intangibles. Like you need guys that have the right mental stuff, especially when you're paying them money. That's kind of a table stakes. But man, I want guys that just look the part.
You gotta have traits.
Traits. And two guys I want to highlight because these are to me two guys that they're ranked high. I think they're 4 stars, but I think they're really much closer to 5 than 4 when you look at the traits. And I'm gonna start with Joel Irvin from Fort Myers. I've seen this guy in person. So in the spring, every top guy, including the guys that didn't sign with us, were on campus. And I can tell you that none of them, I'm talking about the guys that signed with USC, Pepe, Tapoy, Collegier, even Cantwell, who of course is a freak of nature. Nobody looked as good as this guy right here physically. This guy was the biggest, baddest looking dude of all the top offensive linemen that came through, and he looked almost like a baby. And you watch him move around defense in space. You watch him when it comes to some of the stuff he does. Look at the finish. I mean, still raw. I mean, like the technique is not perfect and he's not going against great competition, but what this guy brings to the table physically, I think is absolutely elite. And Pete, I want to focus on another one on the other side of the ball, which is Jalen Waters, the defensive back out of Sefner Armwood, which, we always talked about DJ Ivan. And I would say, DJ, this guy's an NFL player, and people would kill us on that. But like, there's only so many people with certain physical traits walking around, and they get a chance. And when they have a nasty edge like a Waters has, even better. I think this guy, just seeing him, again, I saw him at the OT7, which is basically the 7-on-7 national championship tournament. All the best defensive backs in the country are out there competing. This dude right here looked physically different than any other corner that we saw. Kind of reminded me like a Mike Rumpf in that way. So really, those two to me, I'm not saying they're the two best guys in this class, but they're two guys that just look at and you're saying, man, they have to really try hard not to make the NFL. And I think that's part of what Cristobal's trying to get is guys that just if you're gonna miss, you miss on a guy that has this kind of body type and this kind of potential. But there you go. Look at that. Yeah, no, I think this guy will start right away. But overall, I think this class physically, body wise, is where you want. Yeah, it's interesting. So you talked about your grading system here, Steve, and how you used to grade the recruiting classes. What are some things you learned grading those recruiting classes over the years, as far as just like individual positions or players that just things that kind of tended to work out? Because I know you used to watch all these films back when they were on VHS. Guys that now we know are in the Hall of Fame. Guys that we know are in jail or deceased. I mean, we've seen how these stories have played out, right? Well, so what have you learned?
The one thing that was apparent was that the Jimmy Johnson classes, I actually looked it up one day, none of those classes were really all that highly touted in like the top 5 until his last class in '89, which he never actually got to coach. And that was a famous story. He signs the class in February. He's in Dallas the next month, and Darren Crine tried to sue the school to rescind his letter of intent. That would never happen now. They would just say, "Oh, you're gone. You're out of here." So the one thing that's apparent, we talk about having great top end guys. The Dennis Erickson classes had one trademark. They were actually more highly recruited by the analysts than any of the Jimmy Johnson classes outside that one in 89. But they'd always have like a Warren Sapp or a Ray Lewis, who's a late round guy, or late signee. He actually signed in the summer. People forget about that. Or an unknown guy like a Warren Sapp out of a Popka, who was a tight end. The problem was, for every one of those guys, you had 12 to 15 guys that just never worked out. There was no balance. The great thing about Butch's classes and Jimmy's classes is if you take away the top 3 guys of each class in terms of production, there was generally about another 7 to 10 guys that were really, really good. So the middle part of your class has to be contributors, and they have to be solid, and you got to get some production out of those guys. Now, the back end of your class, like I said, if 1 out of every 3 project or developmental guy hits, now you're doing pretty good there, right? So there has to be some balance throughout the class, but generally the classes that were good were never about just 1 or 2 players. It was basically about a nucleus of, I would say, about 8 to 10 guys that you could say, you know what, those guys were really, really good.
Steve, we're at the hour mark. I know you got to get out of here. Final thoughts on the program. We're feeling pretty good, I got to think, just in general. I mean, this could have been so much worse. Could have been better. Could have been so much worse. How are we feeling?
I want to make a commentary on our coach, Mario Cristobal. I am a supporter and a detractor of his, but I am firmly behind him. I can honestly tell you I'm an advocate of Cristobal from day one. I want this to work with him more than anybody else. Couple of things. Regardless if Miami makes the playoffs or not, you know what? That's out of our control. What I saw last week was a playoff team that is ascending. With that said, this is what I want. In 10 to 15 years, as Mario and Miami has won their 3rd and 4th national championship, and he writes a best-selling book, I need the opening of that book to read like this. On November 1st, 2025, coming out of Ford Stadium, that day I became a better coach. ... That has to be the turning point for his whole philosophy on football, or at least an altering of it, because that game and though his approach can never be replicated ever again. And I say this with all seriousness. That particular game has to be his 87 Fiesta Bowl for Jimmy Johnson. That game can never leave him. It has to be in the back of his mind. He has to be obsessed with that game where all throughout the year, and I told this to someone in the building, I said, I would force Mario to have a meeting about that game every week this offseason before spring ball. Talk about the situations, the game plan, certain decisions I made, the timeouts I took. Just really study that game meticulously and say, God, that we're not doing that again. We're not doing that again. That'll never happen again. Because as I've said, I thought it was one of the worst managed games I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever been so angry at a coach coming out of a stadium as I was that. I was in a trance, but he got better from it. But that game has to be a point where he says, okay, we're going to change things. We're going to be a little bit more up-tempo. We're going to be more fun. We're going to be entertaining. We're going to try to score points. We're going to move this thing forward. And to his credit, and you could say it's a game late, because that's what I think, he's done it. This has to be a continuum of that process going into the 2026 season and beyond. Now, on the flip side, as we're watching the saga of all these coaches changing jobs, all of the drama. By the way, how would you like to be the Peter Oriz and Danny Money talking about the Penn State recruiting class? Oof. Wow. It's almost like they put themselves on death penalty with the firing of James Franklin, who, by the way, is already off to a very good start at Vautech. Shout out to him. Great job there. But at the same time, with everything that I've said about Cristobal, boy, we're lucky to have him. We are lucky to have him because finally we have a coach of high caliber that actually wants to be at Miami for the rest of his coaching life. We've never had a Bobby Bowden. We've never had a Joe Paul. We've never had a Tom Osborne. Now we have our chance with this guy. And when you are a college football fanatic and you live and die with the team, 12 months, 365 days out of the year, One of the great things is when you have a coach that's doing a good job, the greatest security is when you lay your head on that pillow. You're like, big day tomorrow. Got a lot of things to do. But you think, got a football coach. We're good. We're good. We're lucky to have him. Mario, we want this to work with you. Just continue to evolve and adapt. We're going to be okay.
Get some better recruiting classes, and we will be taking the next step.
Pete, I agree with you.
I agree with you 100%.
On a positive note.
Steve, it is a positive note. I just don't think a tiger can change his stripes, man. Let's just go recruit a little bit better, just a little bit better, just a little
All right,
bit.
you're talking about
you'll give yourself a better chance to. I don't want to be a bubble playoff team every year.
I don't
Steve.
either. No, Pete. The discussion should be, wow, is Miami going to get a first round bye? And are we going to be the number one? Pete, I'm with you, but I'm just telling you, this is what I want to see from Mario when he's having Cuban coffee or croquetas, and his wife says, "Mario, do you want another one?" And I just want him out there staring in his face like this, thinking about SMU, about that timeout he took. And his wife goes, "Honey, what? Do you want another one?" Yeah, and just go right back to I'm just telling you, people think I'm nuts. Every book that I've read or that was authored by James William Jimmy Johnson has said, I blew that game. That is on me, but I became a better coach. And I've asked coaches about this. Every single one that has done this at a high level has said, we have a game that we put on ourselves that we blew, but we get better from it. First thing Vince Lombardi said to his Packers when they lost their first championship game to the Philadelphia Eagles, I think it was in 1960 or 61, to Norm Van Brocklin at Franklin Field. He walked into that locker room. He told all those great, hey, guys, remember this feeling because it'll never happen again. I will not allow it. And he never lost another championship game. These things can be a positive. Look, it's disappointing what happened, the midseason malaise, but let's make this a launching pad because I think this has been a good season. But this season has to be an elevating of the floor, not the raising of the roof. It cannot be our ceiling. It has to be the floor moving forward.
Agreed.
Love it. Great words from the man himself, Steve Kim.
And before I get out of here, I want to thank the Cruz family from Jensen Sunset Corners. They, throughout the year, sponsored this segment. They're great Miami Hurricane fans, great part of the community. And support their business throughout the year, not just as I'm doing this segment, not just throughout the football season. They're great people. They love Miami, and they love the Hurricanes. 8701 72nd Street, a Miami tradition. Again, thank you to the Cruz family.
I love it. I love it. Appreciate you, man. You're the best. There's
awesome,
the you
Steve.
right there.
Thank you, man. Go
Thanks,
Canes.
guys.